Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Bryant Francis. I am a contributing editor at Gamasutra.com. Once again, I am the invisible voice that is just floating around inside your head. But I'm joined by two wonderful faces in the lower left hand corner. Chris Graft, could you please introduce yourself?
I can, and I will. I am Chris Graft, editor-in-chief of Gamasutra.
And Mikael, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, Mikael Haveri from Housemark. I'm the head of self-publishing.
I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
That's fine. It happens.
Mikael, where are you calling in from again?
I'm currently in Helsinki, the very sunny, midnight summery northern country of Finland, and yeah, just got everybody's on vacation over here, so it's a quiet city right now.
Yeah, and they're on vacation because you guys you guys and gals just shipped this game,
That's right.
Nex Machina. I swear I could say that last night.
Nex Machina, yeah.
Nex
So
Machina. Can you tell us what this
Nex
game
Machina,
is?
it's a quite a quite a usual type of title for Housemark. It's a really intense kind of twin stick top down shooter, um, reminiscent of a lot of older arcade titles like Robotron comes a lot, and yeah, very simple in terms of overall controls and everything. But then we put a lot of complexity beyond that.
You're right on. So I'm going to try and survive the death robots from hell of Nex Machina. Chris,
Yeah.
could you get us started? Uh,
No, I want you to interview while you're
while I'm
While we're
trying
playing.
to hit some high scores here. I'll throw out my first question. Mikhail, we were talking before the stream, and you told us you gave us a very interesting job title and description of your work that I thought was worth repeating for our viewers. Could you please? I apologize for making you repeat yourself, but could you please go over that again? What you do on the team, and how you helped out with development of this game?
Right. So I don't do code or I don't really do art, but as a head of self-publishing or head of publishing, I I deal a lot with the product development in the beginning of the cycle. So I do a lot of the partnership deals and overall, let's say, consumer end look at the product. You know, I have a big part in marketing, so designing the logos, getting everything to look right and feel right, and then I like to dabble in just coming in and giving my 2 cents on all kinds of design things. But in the end, I'm sort of an outside consultant to the team and helping out with the day to day of the business dealings and so on.
Yeah. So one of the marketing hooks for this game was that it was created in kind of a partnership with Eugene Jarvis, very influential arcade icon, Defender, Robotron 2084. Um, how exactly did that relationship come about?
So this started when our two co-founders and the board of member board were in Dice Awards in Las Vegas when Resogun was nominated a few years back, and when Eugene actually received his Pioneer Award.
Yeah, I was
So
there. Yeah.
okay, right. So the story goes that that same night, at 4 o'clock in the morning, at the lobby of Hard Rock Hotel, these gentlemen got together and exchanged their views on games, and then realized that there might be an opportunity to work together. And we've been always hugely influenced by Eugene's and a lot of other pioneers' work. So we kind of try to grasp that, and then he gravitated positively towards Resogun and what we did with that title. So that's kind of where it started, and ever since he's been a very cool influence, and we've been kind of bouncing ideas back and forth. Him being in Chicago and us being in Helsinki hasn't been the easiest, but we made it work, and it's been good so far.
Yeah. So how did that relationship look like? I think he's credited as design consultant on the game.
Right. So yeah, I think it's a creative consultant. So I mean, we actually had a we had a movie crew follow us for almost 3 years
Mhm.
to kind of. It started off as like we just wanted to have something to recollect our dealings with this god among men in the industry, and they ended up getting a movie deal. So in the beginning, we just went into just thinking about what genre we should do. We already did Defender kind of take on Resogun, so we were thinking about all the kind of genres what the game could be. Quite quickly jumping on Robotron Smash TV and the top down type of stuff. And at that phase, it was just about really creative forces. Like, all right, should we do robots? Should we do what kind of enemies? What are the movies that influenced us? And what's the kind of music? And just overall, he actually had a, a movie script based off of Robotron from early in the 80s. So we got to see a lot of this really old stuff that doesn't really get uncovered that often, and kind of deep dive into what Eugene would have done if Robotron would have been done today instead of 82.
So it sounds like you all did a really focused deep dive into not just Robotron and the games that inspire you, but the things that inspired those games and the feel that they try to convey. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have an understanding of what we want our games to accomplish on different levels when players get into them, and we wanted to understand also what that was back in the day when the technology was really new, and even though limiting, still just huge potential in all the developers' eyes, and it was such a sea change. So we kind of wanted to just understand the differences and the how our words complement each other. But yeah, it was basically we're just getting drunk and talking about shit and trying to understand each other, and that's how it started, and then eventually it grew into a kind of a mutual understanding where we had the same lingo and we could talk more specific terms.
Yeah, so basically pre-production was getting drunk at the Hard Rock, the pre-production.
That was pre-production, and then we did the same in Finland and Chicago, and then at some point we actually had a prototype going just a couple of weeks, maybe 4 weeks into it. So it was easy because we have our in-house engine, the Resogun engine, so we just kind of hacked in together and had the very simplistic kind of Robotron room going, and at that point you could already start talking about audio-visual feedback and movement speed and all kinds of nuances like that.
Yeah. So sorry, you said the prototype came how fast? Like how many days you have like a work or?
We had a running prototype working 4 weeks after starting the conversation that it should be a Robotron Smash TV genre take.
Yeah.
So in essence, this game already was existing quite early on in the process.
Yeah. You had talked a minute ago about deciding what you wanted to accomplish with the game, which leads me to ask, what exactly were you trying to accomplish? I mean, what are some of the guidelines that you wanted to adhere to, the things that said they have to fall here, and if they don't, then they get cut?
So in the beginning, we talked about all these creative things and gimmicks, and so Resogun had the kind of cylindrical world that you're in. So we took the mini map from Defender and we put the whole thing on the screen, and that was sort of a visual gimmick that helped a lot with the gameplay. With this game, we talked about early on if we should have it inside of a cube or outside of a cube, and that's a little bit of where the world structure and the moving on the sides of the world comes from. But then the game director, Harry Kruger, Robotron was a huge influence on him. So he always wanted to have that sort of a claustrophobic feeling. So he wanted it to feel very claustrophobic, and that you needed to constantly dodge all the things in the game. And then that was early on what it was. And personally for me and maybe some others on the team, Smash TV was more of a game that we played a lot of. So that's kind of where the room structure, moving on and getting clear differentiation with the patterns and enemies came from. So that was kind of the phase. At first it was very Robotron, and then we started getting more Smash TV type elements, and then co-op and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but yeah, there's a lot of things that then we wanted to accomplish. How the player feels. Usually we want the majority of the game to be inside of the player's head. So you're always thinking one step ahead. Very kind of high intensity thing, but kind of fast tactics that you need to be able to pull off.
Bryant, are you feeling claustrophobic?
I'm feeling in the zone, man. Like, I'm getting stuff done. Nope, I have a sword. Okay, there's going to be a lot less getting stuff done now.
Yeah. Are you in your head? Here, this is one of the more claustrophobic early levels here.
Yeah.
Where you have to...
You literally can't get off that platform right away.
Yeah.
And the first time it's going to kill you. That's
Oh my god. I made the mistake of trying to do this just in the arena, this level in just the arena without the boosts from like the first level.
Right.
And that was what made me very frustrated with the game for a while. Like, I just want to do a different level. Like, why can't I get past this first area? Until I realized that without a lot more experience behind me, that would be a very difficult challenge. But then I made it through arcade a lot further and realized what was going on. Which brings me to another question: is there's kind of an interesting thing in this game where you need, like, power-ups aren't granted through either a permanent way, like there's not a permanent path of power-ups here, but there is like a clear organized tier of like range, gun spread, the dash explosion, which lets you damage enemies as you dash on them. What was kind of the motivating design behind like having these slowly come throughout the player as they play, as opposed to like you get this and now you can
permanent, yeah.
And then you can lose them too. So like as you die, you have to quickly get that power back, or you're going to be down a tool.
Well, the idea is to avoid any type of permanent, level upping or that kind of stuff, because then you really, it changes the game, and you can't really have this clear leaderboard battle when if things are permanent. So basically these are pickups. These are your arcade game type of pickups. The special weapons we have, once you pick up another one, you lose the one you currently have in possession. And then the basics are like dash, triple dash, dash explosion, the weapon range and spread. And those all kind of stack as you get more of them. And a lot of hardcore gamers or players of this game, if they lose a specific pickup at some point, they'll restart the level, because that's going to have a huge influence on how they try to beat a boss or the score they're going for. But it's basically a arcade pickup system that you have in a lot of older games.
I'm not sure how much you can comment on this aspect of the design, but what did it look like iterating on the things like the bullet patterns and the enemy behavior?
Right.
How are you playtesting all that stuff and iterating?
So we had a lot of understanding from previous games on different enemy types, different range, movement, and aggressiveness of enemies. And I think we just put a lot of different things into the game that we would assume that on some base level work, and then we had this kind of playfield of Lego blocks that we could just rearrange and then try out. And in the end, because these are custom-made levels, the level design really is the enemy or the bullet pattern design. Of course, there's something that comes to the geometrical shape and things that block you into levels and the secrets and pickups, but majority of it is the sort of dynamic elements, which are the enemies. And these are some talented level designers. They have a lot of experience. It's mostly the same team that we had in Resogun, and they went on to the extent that even if you find a secret exit within a level, and you go into the sort of a harder path, you're already playing against enemies that otherwise would only come in the next world. So you're kind of getting a preview of the bullet patterns and these things. And every world has their own specific bullet types. So there's wavy types, there's kind of circular motion types. So every level has a whole new set of tactics that you need to apply. So it works on so many levels, but that's really majority of the design is into enemy and bullet pattern design.
So would you say that the level design is kind of like this weird negative space, actually? Like the space between things as opposed to like the physical squares you're walking on yourself?
Absolutely. So it's exactly that. It's if you think about something like platforming, you really need to think about how you move on top of a puzzle. But here it's more about how do you avoid everything.
Speaking of which, this boss very much sums up that philosophy.
That's yeah, exactly. By the way, I'm not sure if you're getting this. It's probably pretty apparent, but this is our homage to Nintendo. Hopefully, they don't take it too personally.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give a quick reminder to folks in chat. If you have any questions about making this kind of game for Mikael, be sure to ask them. We will throw them at him so that you can learn more about making games like Nex Machina.
Yeah.
So as far as you said that you worked kind of on you work on the publishing side of things. What's your view of the market, like the market landscape of arcade, like really hardcore arcade games like this?
We discussed this a lot with our CEO, and clearly it's a niche market, and we're very aware of that. So I don't think there's going to be substantial growth anytime soon with specifically games like these. I think there's a healthy indie market. So if you get to do games on a relatively small budget, I think you'll be fine. But then once you grow into budgets and team sizes that we have, I think that's where you start getting into an area where you really have to be able to calculate the upside or potential upside of it. And this is our first self-published IP, so we're sort of going on a limb and taking some risks here. So we'll definitely see how much of a success we can accomplish with the sort of brand that we have in this space. And still, I think it will kind of give us the opportunity to either work on this game for a long time to come, or then we'll just need to move on to the next thing and see if self-publishing is actually a viable business for us, or if it's more stable to work with a publisher again.
Yeah, I can imagine like what the reasons could be for going self-publishing, but for Housemarque, what were the reasons?
Well, it stems from the fact that we wanted to do a lot of. Well, let's start with the PC thing. We wanted to do PC for a while, and that sort of was a given that if we make a game of our own, then we'll get to choose what platforms, and we'll get to kind of reestablish the partnerships with those platforms. Another thing was the Eugene part of it. That usually if we're pitching a game with a, let's say, a IP or a partnership or some kind of thing, where the potential other partners or publishers might be bringing in the majority of the money or owning the IP, then the decision is up to them to decide on some of those aspects. So we wanted to really have this opportunity to work with Eugene. So it was kind of a given from the beginning that self-publishing would be at least we would know we could make those decisions for ourselves. And then, of course, the financial upside. We're opportunistic in that way that it's a 22-year-old company, and we're usually been very tied into a very good publisher relationship. But that also means that our projects are financed on the front end of things. So the potential future upside of it has been semi-limited.
Yeah. And you also have the option to bring it to even more platforms.
That's right. So, I mean, these are all new things to us, and it's funny how we actually had to scale our teams outside of the development side to kind of. We weren't really sure how much work it would have been, and it was a lot of work setting things up and just making sure that all these platforms and everything work.
Yeah. So when you say scaling your teams for being a self-published, like, independent developer, right, you mean like the marketing and business headcount?
Marketing, in-house QA, partner QA, all these things that you usually, Sony's a huge house, and they do an awesome job on making sure that they have so much experience with all the ins and outs of it. So you really get to focus on the essential, which is making the title that you want, and they have producers in-house at XDev that we work with a lot, so it makes things a lot easier. And then when there's nobody doing that, you have to kind of pick up the slack, and sometimes you find it the hard way that you didn't think of every single thing involved.
I'm sorry about that. Something's funny's going on at my end with my internet connection.
It might be.
Wow, that was that was a bad way to game over. Yeah, it seems like sorry guys, we use a streaming setup to get the PS4 over to the computer here, and that's the first time it's ever killed frame rate that badly. Huh.
No, sure, it sounds Brian. Sounds like
an excuse.
Sounds like an excuse. My life is full of excuses. I'm a millennial.
Let's go back to that. Like you said, let's talk about things that that you've learned as someone going from external publisher to publishing internally. What are some lessons that you learned, and what are some places that you feel like you could have done better?
So we have a very good understanding of how to budget a Housemarque title. So we know how to put in the man months and on how much everything's going to cost until we release a game, and then everything outside of that. So marketing costs, all these things that you need to create the assets, and those are sometimes or usually taken care of to some extent by our publisher partners. So I mean, just understanding or miscalculating a lot of these things might have come as a surprise. And then, of course, just the workload involved. I wish we would have had a couple more guys on the marketing team and the community team going into this, especially now that it's vacation in Finland. And, but yeah. So, I mean, also the timing of it, setting things up. It's a lot of things that are new to us. So, it's been quite a challenging ride.
Yeah. So part of your job was working on the budget and a lot of the planning?
Right. And when we realized that and games sort of inevitably always run a bit late. They get delayed, and of course, as a sort of a developer that's always been very budget conscious in terms of the development side of it and things, then I think we sort of automatically shifted some of the release marketing type of budget into the development side of things. Even unconsciously, it just happened that way that, okay, well, maybe we can, just do less marketing if the game's going to be better and so on and so on. Or maybe that's just in my head, but that kind of stuff that you don't expect to be doing so much, and in the end, if we cut somewhere, it wouldn't have been in the game side of things.
Yeah. What are some of the ways that I think, like, the business side of being an independent developer, especially one that's publishing themselves, is maybe one of the more under represented areas of discussion. So what does it look like at Housemarque when you're just broadly, you don't need to get into like line items, but when you're budgeting a game, what are you taking into account?
Well, in terms of the publishing side, we try to put in all our just platform specific and marketing specific costs. But like I said, that was a lot of those things were guesstimates, and then when things get delayed, you of course delay some of your marketing things don't go in line. So, for example, we had a lot of plans to get this game out there in the expos and venues where we could do sort of ad hoc tournaments with a lot of players. So you could come in and just play it like it was an arcade game, and get on the leaderboards. And if you did some really well on leaderboards, you could get a T-shirt or something. But then, as things got delayed, all this budget that we had in to go to these expos, we just kind of had to try to figure out what to do with it. So it's fairly difficult to adjust all these activities, all these marketing actions to a changing schedule, for example.
Yeah. So what happened here, Bryant?
Oh, I just my skill my skill levels hit a wall. My weak
Which difficulty level are you playing?
rookie. You had to sip your coffee right as I said that, didn't you?
No, it was no intention there, but yeah.
It's fine. It's fine.
Never mind. Go ahead.
I admit, I'll admit for the folks at home that these were the kind of games that in my life. There's always been a big wall I hit where I just my dedication to practicing the amazingly tight skills you have to succeed at these games does not exist.
I play on rookie too, so I won't judge.
Yeah. That's why I like role-playing games a lot. I like slow and thoughtful. But that being said, I have heard a lot of incredible design theory about these games. I know you weren't a core designer, but you said you sort of started up there with the early product. And something that's often talked about a lot about is how these games embody like one of the purest states of flow in game design. We were talking before the show about how when you're really doing well at this game, you're not looking at like where your character is. You're sort of looking at the whole screen, like your eyes sort of unfocused, and you've got everything before you. How do you? I mean, we sort of talk about that and take it a little for granted a bit. Oh, Jesus, barely made it out of that one.
I can give you some examples of the sort of battles I've had from my perspective with, let's say, game director Harry Kruger. So I wanted this. We did some animations for the first trailer, the sort of to set up the storyline and to set up kind of the hero. And I would have liked to have similar transitions between each world. So you see the character move on and tackle a new area and so on. But it very quickly became apparent that that was a no-go. And it was mainly because of the fact that we didn't want to take the player out of that flow state. So when you're in the zone, you can't push a CGI or a 2D animated movie in front of their faces and then expect them to kind of get into the same state again in the beginning of the first level. Even the kind of level ending and loading screens you're seeing here, that is something that we're very aware of how that affects the player's mindset. So a lot of these things, usually, most of the time, the game director wins, but I try to have my battles of, things that boost the visual side and things that maybe add a bit of storytelling and so on.
This is going to be, I may not phrase this question as well as I like, but frankly, if it's an arcade game that's trying to be about about what it sounds like the game director tends to win over, why do you have the very valid perspective? Like, what makes you have the valid perspective that you think you need stuff like that in a game?
So, I'm looking at, well, first of all, I need to play the devil's advocate a little bit, just so they have that opposing view there, so they don't get too comfortable in their seats. But also in another way, we're always looking to find wider audiences to our games, seeing on how we could tell a bit more about the game, and then maybe have new players pick it up, for example. And I see that creating a much richer brand or a character backstory, and these things do have an influence on that. So that's one of the reasons that we were looking into it. But again, it's the first one to go off the list when things start happening. So, but we still try to do a bit more of it, and I really learned to come into terms with that, with more of this environmental storytelling, and with how do we work with the aspect of mystery. How do we work with a character that we don't want to tell that much about? So in the end, we were able to address a lot of those questions, just not in the very direct way that maybe I initially imagined.
What about community building for an arcade game? Of course, like Resogun has leaderboards, and this has leaderboards, but you're also using things like Discord, and you're trying new stuff to engage your community. So what is the community support? What do you envision that to be for this game?
So with the alpha and beta stages, we really we did a lot of stuff on Discord, and that was a huge help because we had much more of a live relationship with our players than in the past. With like forums, it gets very static and it's not as interactive. With all kinds of social media, you don't get into it. So it's more the IRC type of approach, and I think it really works with, especially in early development stages where you need to have a conversation instead of a bulletin board. And in general, we wanted to approach this title with a bit more of a community approach, and one of the mottos we had was early on that we were saying this game should be a bit of be the best of the rest. How do we incentivize all types of players and not just the most hardcore of our community? So we've been trying to implement a lot of these things that would allow for more casual, more, all kinds of players to still enjoy the game in the long term. Then, because not everybody can be in the top 10 in the world. So,
what are you doing then to encourage? I mean, even on Rookie, this game itself as being extremely difficult.
Right.
So we're doing to accommodate the more casual players.
We actually, Rookie's sort of our default setting now, so we understood that maybe we made it quite hard, so we made that. We want people to play it on Rookie. We want people to start there, and then it's one of those things that hopefully transitions you into harder areas as your skill improves also. But in the end, we wanted to, for example, the arena mode that you have a lot of these challenges in, and you can collect in-game currency and then unlock more challenges or even visual vanity items and stuff. We wanted that whole ecosystem to kind of relate to the player skill level. So whenever you're playing and you're seeing the leaderboards and you have the targets that you're trying to accomplish, those scores are targets that are based off your current skill and performance. So they're not just, oh, get this random target that's just set here. Those are very fluid, and that's one of the ways that we wanted people to. The difficulty itself doesn't change, but your targets change a little bit.
Yeah.
And for future content, if we get to do some, we were talking about even having regional communities. People could set up their own local tournaments. We could do Finland versus Sweden kind of stuff where you have collective leaderboards, etc. So much more community-driven design there.
Yeah. I haven't dug into it quite yet, but I know that on Resogun there are like weekly challenges. Does this do the same thing? Is that what the targets are?
Yeah, that's okay. Currently, they aren't changing on a specific schedule, but we have that as one of the options going forward. The Resogun weekly challenges actually came in one of the DLC updates.
Okay.
So it was a free content update, and then some of the new modes were paid for content.
Yeah, I will say I totally would crack out on those weekly things. It was like the only way that I could maybe get closer, like higher up on the leaderboards, because there were less people playing these very specific things. So as someone who's not super like I'm not somebody who's going to be at the top of the leaderboard on like the main parts of the game, but it's kind of cool as a more casual player to feel like you're getting listed up there. Yeah,
and most likely we'll do something. So right now, as it is, just right past the launch, all the challenges, we just have a big list of them. But if we would add them, they might be like open for a week, or they might be highlighted for a certain week, and then go into the bottom of the list as sort of previous content or so on.
Yeah. What about how much does the team pay attention to how people are playing the game on Twitch, and is there any lessons that they derive from that?
Well, we wanted to. The only thing we wanted to restrict during beta was the streaming side of it. So we wanted everybody who wants to stream it to kind of save it until really close to the launch, and we also forgot to register our Twitch profile for the game. And now the whole week we've been
wondering about that.
So we've been trying to reach. Hopefully, somebody at Twitch is watching this, so we can get our profile going. We need the community to help out with this also. I don't know. Maybe we just missed something, but again, this is something that's fairly new to us. Resogun had a good community of hardcore players streaming it. But I'm looking forward to a lot of cool things, and then hopefully even things that we can interact and have tournaments with, and this kind of things where it's more of an interactive type of system rather than just the top 10 players playing amongst themselves.
Yeah. So as far as I know that Housemarque is obviously known for these arcade-style games, but there have been other games like Outland, which is kind of like an arcade platformer. Is Housemarque only going to be an arcade-ish game developer, or how much has the studio explored that internally to move outside of that genre, maybe to something that was quote unquote more marketable, that will involve like narrative and story like that, and isn't like kind of borderline massacre type stuff?
Yeah. So we did do early on in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had two snowboarding games which were kind of the thing back in the day with SSX and all those. And then there was a lot of different titles between now and then. But I think one of our core values and our sort of unofficial motto is that gameplay is king. So we'll always want to create a very fluid experience that the gameplay gets to shine on a lot of different levels. That doesn't necessarily mean it will take away from narrative or other things that are valuable, but I think that will always be the strongest of the core values. So we sort of do enjoy being typecast into this shoot 'em up position that we're in, and we know how to do these games and it's a lot of fun. But we're always looking at different options and different genres, and I'm sure we'll be planning a lot of different cool things. But the core, the thin red line that runs through it, I think, will be that the gameplay should be solid.
Mm-hmm.
Personally,
I think that you should keep on making the arcade games.
Right.
It's like somebody
we'll see what the
needs to
market's
keep
gonna
making them. Somebody needs to keep making these kinds of games, especially at the level of production and quality that Housemarque does.
Dent
It's
Forface
not super common.
says that the next game should be a visual novel. So Chris, you have an
Right.
opponent there.
Yeah, we're gonna make.
Yeah, thanks.
We actually did 96. We launched a point-and-click adventure. Haven't done those since. But again, like the thing was, the market for point-and-click games was fairly limited to the 90s, and then we saw a lot of different genres take over. The current market for arcade score hunting games like this isn't as strong as it has been. So we also have that reality to sort of live with.
How does it feel to... It sounds like you've been with the company for a long time. I'm sorry I didn't ask about that before. How does it feel to watch genres come and go? Like, you have a team of developers who reliably know how to make a kind of game, and then suddenly the audience just is like, nah.
Right. Well, it's weird. We this is not a thing we talk about that often, but we actually made so we published one mobile title, like a semi-early iPhone game that didn't really fit our portfolio that much, and then we soft launched one that we canceled. So we did try to do that stuff too, as I know a lot of console PC studios did at some point. And I think we've had a lot of game prototypes and pitches along the years that not a lot of people would see as a Housemarque title nowadays. And it's weird because you get into these. In the end, you live in a bubble. You live in a bubble of where your corporate culture is, and even coming this late back to PC is something new to us, and we admitted that we really haven't done PC games in a long time. So it's again a lot of things to relearn. Even though we did do Outland, a port, originally it was on consoles, but yeah, it's weird because genres, platforms, distribution methods, all these things change quite often. And then once you start being good at something, it's very hard to pivot quickly and change your direction successfully. So I think there's a lot of learnings in the company, and we just need to be able to understand the risks involved into heading on to whole different things,
Can you talk at all about how sales have been? I know it's still very early on with the launch of this game, but between console and on Steam.
I couldn't even give you those numbers because I'm not aware of both sides, but we're still very unsure of how things will continue. I think that one thing that is apparent is that we're about to go on vacation, and the teams are very tired. And if we do any early judgments at this point, it's just going to be not based on a lot of actual data. So, but the funny thing is that it's a scary space, and you're much more involved now as a self-publishing company. So it's a much more scarier thing to even try to comprehend than before. And in the end, we just want to keep on making these games. So all the thoughts go into like, I don't know how much will it cost to develop further, and so on and so on. So we'll see. I think after July, which is our usual summer vacation month, we'll know a lot more about how things went and how we can move forward.
Yeah. Wow, this is getting too scary. Something less scary. Getting the music for this game, and the music is great. It goes along perfectly with the whole vibe. And what was it like? Like, how'd you go about getting the music for this game?
So it's funny because we've our main composer, Ari Pulkkinen, who did Outland, Super Stardust, Alienation, Dead Nation. So a lot of our titles, and he also did the Trine series for Frozen Byte. He also did the Angry Birds theme song.
Oh, really?
So he's been very closely involved from the beginning, and I think a lot of the team members and in general the synthwave style of music was kind of at least gaining popularity when we started developing the game. So that sort of hit, and we were listening to a lot of these certain types of artists, and even talking to some of them about being on board the soundtrack. And then Ari sort of is a jack of all trades, and he started composing this amazing soundtrack. And there's songs from 3 people, so mostly it's by Ari. Then there's this other guy, Tuomas, who's a long-term composer from Finland. And then actually the game director, Harry, did 2 songs, or 1 song, and laid out the bass for 1 track. So it's a very much in-house thing. We actually, on the soundtrack, if you go buy it or listen to it on Spotify, we have the main theme with vocals, and the singer in that is our Matterfall producer, who still has a rock band, been doing a lot of rock band stuff since the early 90s. So it's mostly done in-house.
Yeah, I was listening to the one with vocals just this morning, just jamming out. It's so good, and it really fits. I really appreciated the. Also, I think it was the launch trailer for this game, and it just had the whole like 80s arcade vibe, and then you have that song, that synthwave stuff, and it just kind of set the tone for. I don't know. You just feel like, okay, like this is going to be like a modern 80s style arcade experience in my house.
Right, and I think that we did it with the sort of taste also, that we didn't overdo it with all the nostalgia, but it's sort of, I like to think that it's still balanced. Like there's a clear influence, but it's not pushing that by any means.
Real quick, I'm going to jump in. There's a question in the chat from Dan T4Cell. I'm going to phrase it slightly differently than they did. Sorry, Dan. But they would like to know if you were expecting a significant player reaction based on the fact that this game is more challenging than your other games. Because he seems to imply that some people are frustrated by how difficult this game is. But I'm curious if you had any anticipation for how players would react to differences in your game design.
Yeah, I think. Well, one of the things that Harry, the game director, liked to say is that he plays a lot of the old school games. He can run through Rygar without even looking at the screen. So he's a pretty hardcore gamer, and he loves Dark Souls, for example. So I think we were sort of riding that wave of like, hey, listen, I think people are ready for like games that have a challenge. Um, uh, he likes to say that Dark Souls brought the balls back to gaming, and I think we're just sort of extending that a little bit. So it's a very much conscious decision that, uh, and that's also somewhere I had a little bit of a back and forth with him. Like, listen, I'm not the best. I play on rookie mostly. I'm pretty good at experience, which is our normal, but I wanted the rookie to be more of the default setting because usually people don't pick rookie as a difficulty setting. So we were really aware of this, and hopefully people understand that that's also a part of the system that we want them to learn and to grow with the game, and not to be able to just beat it in an hour and then call it a day.
You do give 99 continues, so got that.
Yeah,
that's generous.
That's generous, and it's very much a throwback to the arcade era also.
Should have brought back should have made some microtransactions in here where you could just like old arcade games in the actual arcades, like spending quarters and buying continues.
Funny that you mentioned.
It's a bad idea.
Funny that I'm not sure if I should be able to talk, even talking about this, but we have some things in the backlog list of things to try, and one of them's called Pure Arcade Mode. And it's an arcade mode where you pay a quarter. So maybe you buy tokens with a dollar or a couple of dollars. You pay a quarter per play or per continue, and there's no pause.
Oh my god!
and there's the leaderboards are of course only for the people who pay that entry price. But that's something that we did kind of play around with that idea, and who knows? Maybe it will make it.
That is a cool idea.
I bet.
And then it incentivizes it like by having a separate leaderboard, and
right.
Yeah.
I bet it would be appealing. Like, I feel like the reaction would be hostile largely on like people. There's a challenge sometimes between convincing players that devs need to like eat and.
Yeah.
But
but it's like and if you just make it an option.
Yeah, or I would think if it helped fund like a tournament scene or something, like 343 did something like where they used the IAP to like fund the tournament pool or something, or Dota or Valve does it. I think that would be
exactly. I mean, that's something we'd love to do. We see potential in this game as being a competitive type of a game, even though it's very different from modern, let's say, esport titles and everything. But these are all things that we'd love to do. What we need to do is to talk with our community, see how the game performs. But yeah, absolutely, those are very good ideas.
Got all the good ideas here. Just let us run it now.
Yeah.
So, what is your community saying right now? Now that it's launched.
Mostly, it's just it's kind of the honeymoon phase. They're liking it. Some of them a lot. Some are running into some issues. So we're trying to make sure that everything's up to par and just there's no bugs or anything in the game. But yeah, I think the community is just a lot of the people are just playing it through for the first time or the second time and finding out some of the better hidden secrets. And I don't know if anybody's really had any time to think about, where do we go from here? What do we do next? Mm-hmm. So we're still waiting for that phase to start.
Yeah. You called it a honeymoon phase, implying that you expect the honeymoon to end.
Absolutely.
At some point, it's good to be prepared.
Everyone has to come back from the Bahamas eventually.
Bryant, you're gonna be great at this first level.
Yeah.
We're gonna move it up to veteran difficulty here pretty soon.
Well, no. Just no. I'm bad at video games.
I think it,
Don't worry about it.
I will say, like, I'll repeat again, like, even as someone who's bad at video games, I'm enjoying myself, though. I
Well,
guess we have no choice but to ask Alex Waro's question, Mr. Seraph2621, hanging out in the chat, our own Gamasutra editor, Alex Waro. How come there's no tutorial, like, or info screen? Like, I admit I had to load in and figure out the controls sort of myself when I played this last night.
yeah. So if you look at the two options here, it's either that we didn't have time to put it in, or we didn't want to put it in, and I don't know. Sometimes so let's take Alienation for example. Alienation had a lot of different uh, mechanics and movements and upgrade systems and loot that you had to know how to upgrade, etc. It 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 required that we put in a tutorial. We didn't want to make it one that is too hand-holding, so it's not too pushy. But here it's two sticks, two buttons, and you play the game. So I think we sort of left it on that, and we also want the game in general to be about discovery. So the everything you discover on your own, at first, yeah, it can be a little bit frustrating, but then once you get the basic mechanics down, you start realizing that, oh, there's these humans that you can collect, and oh, you can do the combo, and this is how you get a better score, and then the secrets and everything. So we wanted the experience you have with the title to be progressive from minute one. That, yes, you're going to die a lot, and the game is also called Death Machine, so that comes with the territory. But
That's your answer, Alex. It's called Death Machine. Get used to it.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
I definitely got that feeling of you don't exactly know, I like this approach. You don't exactly know what the power up is going to do the first time you play it, maybe even like the second time you like after your fifth death or something. Then you start to realize what a weapon does, how it, which enemies is more effective against. Like the sword will just swipe out of like a horde of those little crap things, things like that, and
also,
then it starts to click.
We've added the option for players to go to the leaderboards and watch other people's playthroughs to learn from them and see where the secrets are, how they perform, and what are their tactics. So, I mean, you can go and do that, but again, we didn't want to push anything. We wanted people to discover and experience.
I know you said you're not a hard coder type earlier, so I apologize for asking you to answer this question. But what does it take to implement a feature like that? Because I think Blizzard's actually seen some success with their play at the game feature that's sort of similar. Like, it's not watch this player to see how they did it; it's watch this player to see how you died embarrassingly.
Yeah. So basically, you need to be able to. You can't save it as video. You have to save it as a string of code. So the movement has to be in there, and that also means that the game has to run every time in a similar way. So if there's physics or other things that get in your way, you won't be able to simulate the exact same run through. But yeah, you basically save the movement code on a server, and then you can access it from that, and then the game plays it back.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to run out of time here, Bryant. Do you feel like you're any better? Or are you in the zone right now?
Oh, I've absolutely lost being in the zone after one of those like deep arcade runs we had a while back. I've been like stringing by on like, but that's not to say I haven't enjoyed our time talking, Mikael. I've just been like, my poor thumbs are having a bad day right now.
That's also a nostalgia trip, I think.
I don't remember if. Well, I don't remember. Well, I had an N64 when I was a kid. My thumbs being abused was basically a feature for that system. Yeah, so I will commence the closing ceremonies, although I'm going to do things in reverse once. Mikael, we've had a great time asking you questions today. If our audience wants to ask you any more questions about making games like this, where can they contact you?
So you can go on our Twitter. We're very active there. We also have Facebook communities for our games and the company itself. And then we do have Discord, which is really the most active platform for communicating with the dev team. So I think these three, you'll be pretty good.
Cool. Well, then I'll begin wrapping it up. Thank you for joining us for another wonderful hour on the Gamasutra Twitch channel. If you care at all about the art and business of making games, we encourage you to hit the follow button down below, because if you do, you'll get notifications whenever we go live with another interview, roundtable, or a bit of gameplay commentary that we do sometimes. I have been Brian Francis, contributing editor to Gamasutra. Chris, who have you been?
I have been and am still Chris Graft.
So thank you all for joining us. The game is Nex Machina. You can download it on PS4 and Steam. And if you like arcade experiences and just want to see how one developer is keeping them alive in 2017,
yeah, just get it.
Get it.
It's. I think it might be better than Resogun, and Resogun is great. So get it.
That's the Chris Graft trademark
Seal of
recommendation
approval.
right there. Seal of approval. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.